Okay, there is an exception occur, okay, at this line. What is the line number? 7. Okay, at this line number 7 there is an exception will occur. What is the exception class they are going to show us? Is an arithmetic exception which is going to divide it by 0. What is arithmetic exception means? Okay, this was a normal Java class only. We'll go for this class. And what is this? What's that? Okay, here you can see that it was a class only, but what type of class? It was a public class, and they are going to what they are going to extending here are runtime exceptions. Okay, this runtime exception is extending with exception class. What is this exception class is extending with? Throwable. Okay, serializable. It was an interface. Okay, like this we have like different type of exception based on the that means whatever the exception type the object, that object is going to be created. Suppose if you are trying to cast some object, okay, it is not able to cast that value, so that it is going to throw as cast, unable to cast the text, okay, that value. Okay, that exception. Arithmetic means if any arithmetic related, okay, if here you can see, right, there was an information given over here itself. Okay, throws when an exception arithmetic condition has occurred. For an example, an integer is divided by 0 throws an instance of this class. Okay, at runtime if something is breaking and this particular class is going to be, object is created and it is given to the JVM, so that JVM is going to printing the statements along with the stack trace. This we called as a stack. Okay, because where it was exception was occurred in this line number, we are able to see this line number. Okay, now what I am going to do means I'm going to write the same code. Are you able to follow, right? Any questions on this?
No, sir, I am following you, sir.
Okay, I'm going to write one print method. Okay, inside this I'm going to have the exception code. Okay, and I'm creating object of this class. Test equal to new test. Okay, and I'm going to call this print. Okay, now if I call this method means, okay, even though it will give an exception. Now again you can see, right, where it is going to throw. Previously it was giving a line number 7, now it was shifted to 13. When the cursor is going line number 8, okay, from here it is going to call this particular method, so that it is come to this. Okay, so that it is going to give the line by line where the cursor is moving from where to where. Okay, from line number 14 the exception was occurred, previously where it was line number 8. Okay, like this we can get the trace of this exception. Okay, this is called as a stack. Okay, and how we can avoid this exception handling. That means we have like different type of ways to handle the exception. Okay, one is applying try and catch. Okay, this is the one way. Other way is called as a throws. Okay, these are two ways. Okay, now we are going to use the first approach. Okay, that means we know that here the program is going to throw an exception, so that I want to handle it. Okay, the exception code we are going to write inside this try block. Okay, what type of code we are going to write inside the try block? That is called exception code. Okay, that means in going forward I may see exception on this line of code, so that, okay, we need to write here. Okay, what are the code the except it may cause exception at runtime. Okay, and what are the why it was giving a compile time error means because when you write the try you need to write the catch also. Okay, so that I'm writing catch. Catch means whenever the exception is occurred, I need to execute this line of code like this. Okay, so that I'm what type of exception I'm going to see here means when it is got executed arithmetic exception. So that I will write that
ఇందాక ఒకటి ఉతికి లోపల పెట్టాను మామయ్య ఆఖరి
arithmetic
అయితే
exception
ఇదైతే
okay. I will write this way. Okay, now what happened, right? Okay, I will show you one thing. Okay, I'm going to commenting these things for now, and I will come back again. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to running this code. Okay, what are the lines it got executed? 1, 2. Okay, that means here exception is got, and below lines what are the code you have written, this is not executed, right? The program is terminated. Okay, got it, right? Now what happened, I am going to applying the try and catch. Okay, you can see the difference of that. Now you can see, right, it is not giving any red color line like previously it was giving, right? It was executed completely. Okay, line number 1 it got executed, line number 2 it got executed, but line number 3 is not executed. I will give the E so that it will bring the message as well. Okay, here you can see that line number 1 is printed, line number 2 is printed, line number 3 is not printed. Okay, why? Because in the above line number 19 the exception is occurred, so that the cursor will jump to this line, so that the cursor has been executed this line, then after it got printed this line. Okay, it got printed the line number 4. Okay, then after it got printed this statement, because this was a message we are getting from this one E object. This is called as an arithmetic object. Who has created this at runtime? The JVM has created. Okay, here the exception is occurred, so that it what type of exception the JVM is going to decide it, so that it is going to create it, and here it got thrown, so that it was catched here. Okay, finally it got executed. Okay, then after it got executed, we are able to see. Okay,
Yes, sir.
here 1, 2, but 3 is missing, and 4 and 5 we are able to see. Now what I am going to do means I am passing the right values. I will create one more print. Print 1. Okay, here I am going to give some value called as 2. Now it is not divided by 2. Okay, so that there is no exception we see. What is the flow we are going to get? We will see it now. Okay, we are getting 1, we are getting 2, and we are getting 3. That means it is entering the, it is condition and it is passing, then after it is going to this line number 3, then after it is printing this x value as well. What is the value of the result we are going to get as a 5? We are printing it. Then after you are able to see that without exception, so that it is not going for line number 4. Okay, it is going to print in the final line. Okay, are you clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now I will try to add here as a return. This thing. It's not printing line number 4. Okay, here you can see one more thing. Okay, in the interview point of view, they will ask this like questions. Okay, it is going to printing, and here I given as written. Okay, so that okay, it is coming to this code, and finally it is returning this, so that it is not executing this line of code. Okay, one more thing. This is a one way of handling the exceptions. Okay, the other way is called as a throws. Okay, throws means I am not going to handle the exception. Who is going to calling this particular method? They will be handling the exception. Okay, that's what they are going to say to the user. Okay, suppose I am going to copy the same method, pasting it. I am going to give a set 2. Okay, now I am returning all the statement. This entire code I will remove it. Okay, we know that here the exception is occurring, so that I am not throwing it. Okay, I am going to running the code. Okay, sorry, we need to call to this print 2. Okay, I am going to see line number 2 and 3. Line number 2 and 3, because it was success case. Now I will make it as a false exception case. Okay, you can see, right? Automatic exception has been occurring. So I will say to the caller method that I am not going to handle the exception. Please handle by yourself. Close. Okay, I can go automatic. చేసాను చెప్పరా వారు తీసుకొని అట్లా బండి మార్నింగ్ కాల్ చేసుకోండి అదే బండి తీసుకొని ఉంటా ఉన్నప్పుడు అయితే 3.4 ఓకే 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 సరే అది చూపిస్తాను టైం ఉంటే క్యాన్సిల్ చేసుకోవచ్చు సరే 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 డబ్బులు ఇచ్చింది కాబట్టి అయిపోయినట్టుంది సో మళ్ళీ కాల్ చేస్తాను ఒకసారి షేర్ చేసి మళ్ళీ చేస్తాను చేస్తాను yeah okay now what I'm going to do is I'm going to saying to compare that I'm not going to handle this exception. Okay, so that I'm going to throw this exception. Who is going to calling this method is going to calling this method, so that he need to handle the exception. Okay, like this we can transfer the exception to other who is going to calling. You see it will throw in there case only in the line number 2 itself. Line number 2. Yeah, here it is exception is handling, so that we are going to throw in this exception to follow method, so that we need to handle the exception over here itself, so that try and catch me back. Here you can do like this. Now if I run it means there is no exception will be occurred. You see line number 2 is executed, the exception message you are printing over here itself. Okay, got it? Any questions on this? Currently we are seeing only one type of exception classes called as a runtime exception. Okay.
Sir, actually, small question, sir.
Yes, please.
Actually, try and catch we have done means it is direct method like it is coming, sir. But throw method it is somewhat linked.
Yeah, throw method it should be a linking only, but here you can see right it is something like we are working with runtime exception, so that we are not able to see these differences. Okay.
We can. What is the benefit of throw over try and catch, sir?
So means try and catch means we are not handling this exception, so that who is going to in compile time exception we can able to see it. I will show you. Okay, suppose I will create one more class and I will show you in compile time exceptions. Okay.
Okay, sir.
These are runtime exceptions. We have like two type of exception. One is called compile time, one is a runtime. Okay, runtime exception doesn't restrict you to handle or something like this. Okay, I created one more called as a main test. Okay, inside that I'm going to write main method. Okay, here. Okay. Here also I'm going to have like one method called as a print. Void print. Okay, inside that I'm going to create a file equal to new file. Okay, why it is going to give an error? Why? Because argument of file. Okay, here you can see right it was giving an error. Okay, why it was giving an error? You can see right at the create new file. Okay, what type of exception it is going to throw? Here IO exception. Okay, whether the user has been handled any exception over here? No. Okay. Create a file. We are going to say security not equals to null, security check path is valid. Create file, execution path. Okay, in the it is going to provide the path by default. It is going to take it from this here. It was an abstract method. Okay. Okay. Now what I mean to say that there was something like two type of exception classes. One is called as a runtime exception, other is called as a compile time exception. This exception is called as a compile time exception. The exception classes which are extending directly for the exception, this is called as a compile time exception or compile time exceptions. Okay, this we called as the class which is going to extending this runtime exception is called as a runtime exception. Okay, that means it is occurred at runtime only. That means when you are executing the code, then only the exception is going to be thrown. previously we given like I equal to 10 by 0, then we are not able to see any exception over there itself. At running on the our code only, then only we are able to see the exception that saying that it is trying to divide it by 0, so that the arithmetic exception has been created, right? But here in the compile time exception, while compiling your code only, it will verify that whether you handle that exception or not. Okay.
Yes, sir. It means while compiling the code, if it shows a error, it is a compiling exception.
Yes.
And when running the runners, if it shows a error, it is a runtime exception.
Yes, exactly.
Example,
But both are going to create an exception only. Both are going to create the exception object, and it is going to throw at runtime only. But compile time exception is something like the exception which is going to be created with human intention. Suppose here I am going to create an okay, creating a file, but the file means we need to provide some path of the file, right? But whether the file path
yes,
is
sir.
provided or not, we don't know. Okay, the system will think that whether the user will be provide the path or may not provide the path, so that I'm going to throwing an exception, so that at runtime they can understand if I'm going to create like this, okay, this is called as a throws. I can handle this way, or else I can use try and catch. Okay, like this. Okay, here I can provide the alternate logic over here itself. Okay, I can write like this also. File is not created. Okay, like this I can write. So that we are going to get some meaningful response, right? If our case is failing means we are going to get some response. Okay, this way we can handle the exceptions, right? But compile time exceptions means if you are writing some, you are trying to call some methods which is going to throws, then you need to handle it. Okay, it is throwing, right? Whether you can handle it at calling this particular method. If you are not interested to handle the exception, you can ignore the method by using throws keyword. Okay, like this you can declare the throw, so that who is going to call this particular method. Suppose here I'm trying to call this particular method. Okay, main test equal to new main test. Okay, then I'm going to call the test dot, what is that one, print method. Okay, if I'm going to call the print method, even though it is going to give an exception, why? Because it is going to throwing the IO exception. That means it is an exception. By default it was a extending the exception class. Whereas automatic exception, it is not extending the exception class, it is extending runtime exception class, so that the runtime exception will not give any compile time error. Like this I can handle. We are not getting any output. We'll see this. Okay, the file has been created, I think so. So that print line. That means it got created. We'll just refresh. You can see the file name. Okay, this file has been created. Okay, now instead of this one I can give something like call as a dummy value. We'll try to run this one. You can see, right, what IO exception, the system cannot find the path specified. Okay, this was a runtime exception we are going to see. Previously we are not see this exception at runtime only, but we are not handled any exception, even though we are able to see it. But at compile time we need to handle the exception. Okay, this path, right, suppose the resource file, value, we may are passing, we may not passing the value. So that like this, we have like different type of compilation errors. Okay, are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Um, it means we are converting the compiler exception into runtime exception, and we are seeing.
No, no. The exception itself we call as a compile time exception. Okay. In interview, we
Okay,
can
sir.
get what are the different type of exception. You need to say that a runtime exception and compile time exception. Okay. So what is the difference between the runtime exception or compile time exception? Okay. The runtime exception means it is not going to throw any. It is not going to warn us when we are writing the code. But compile time exception is it will warn us. We need to handle the exception right away. For us, it will not go. Okay, but runtime exception is something like which is going to done by the human made mistakes, that means programmer mistakes. Okay, compiler exception is something like it may be it is not human made. Okay, it is something like we need to handle it properly. Okay, runtime exception we need to handle it properly, but compile time means compiler is going to say that you are missing something like this, so that we are able to clear about it. Okay.
Okay, sir.
You can say one more difference like compile time exceptions are extending the exception class, whereas runtime exception is extending the sorry the runtime exceptions are extending the runtime exception class.
Okay, sir.
Okay, these are the difference. Okay, this we called as a trace, actually stack trace. Currently the cursor came to the line number 12, then after it moved to the line number 25, then after it moved to the file. It entered the java.io.file class. It tried to enter the create new file method. Okay, here it was break. Why? Because here when NFTS file system they are going to, and they are trying to create file exclusively. Okay, when I trying to create a file, there is no path has been found for that file, so that it was failed to create. This is called a stack trace. Okay, based on this stack trace only we will got to know that where the exception has been occurred. Okay, if you click on this line numbers, okay, so it is going to pointing to this location. Okay, you will go to where here the cursor is failing. Okay, here actually logic is failing. Okay.
Okay, sir. A small doubt, sir.
Yes.
Uh, in the starting, we give test.txt. We give a file name, and it after compiler exception, it came, sir. Uh,
Why? Because here we have not passing any path over here, file name or something like this. We are going to give a blank value,
okay, sir.
so that was the issue. Okay, I will add the both the code.
టీసీ వచ్చాడమ్మా
Okay, in the above
easy
code
వచ్చాడా?
we cannot see any exception because we have some value over here inside the file.
Okay, sir.
మీ నెంబర్ చెప్పగానే మీ పేరు చెప్పండి అంతే.
Okay, here I'm going to give the blank.
ఆయన నెంబర్ చెప్పగానే పేరు
Okay,
చెప్పండి.
if I run this logic means it is not going to give any error over here. Okay, the file has been created. Okay, but when I try to call this print one, okay, it was a blank over here, so that I'm going to see the exception. Okay, if I want to write some message over here, the file is not created, something like this message will be prints.
ఆ,
File is not created.
ఆ, బటన్ తెచ్చుకుందా బటన్
You can see that line number 1 is executed, then now it is saying that file is not created. This is our customized message. Then after we are going to get the entire stack trace. Okay, when the exception is occurred, then it is moving to the catch block, right?
Yes, sir.
ఓకే అమ్మా విజయవాడ కదా బిర్యానీ
Yes, sir. I got it, sir.
నైస్ బుక్ చేస్తా.
Are you clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll done for today. Try to practice this one code. Okay, we'll connect
Yes,
tomorrow.
sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.